Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we're going to be recapping our Western Conference semifinal matchup between the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche. An incredible series, back and forth, but let's be honest, the better team won this series. We're going to discuss that and recap that series in today's video. So, let's start off with Game 1, shall we? So Game 1, it looked really promising for the Avs, and a lot of people picked the Avs to go on a run, and rightfully so, because the Avalanche have the guns up front. The only thing that was really concerning was how would the goaltending do, because it was a little shaky in the beginning of the Jets series. How would they do in this second round? Would they continue from where they, kind of finished the series, or would they fall back to where the beginning of the playoffs were? And we'll get there. So Game 1 was an overtime victory for the Avs, a really good game overall. That was a big game for them because they got home ice advantage after that game. And the game winner came from someone you wouldn't expect. It wasn't McKinnon, it wasn't Makar, it wasn't Nichushkin. It ended up being Miles Wood. So Miles Wood gets the overtime victory goal in Game 1. Both teams played really well. Colorado on the power play was really good. They were 2 for 2 on the power play. And that ended up being really, as much as the overtime goal was the true difference maker, their ability to score on special teams was huge in Game 1. Then we get to Game 2, and Dallas flipped the script. So this is the game where Miro Heiskanen just decided to go off. He gets a pair of goals in this game, and we saw some goals from Roope Hintz, Tyler Seguin's first of the series. Of course, Joel Kiviranta had to score in this series because, of course, he was a former member of the Dallas Stars back in the day. Same thing for now, Val Nichushkin. He had an incredible playoff run for the Avalanche. We're going to get to that in a second. I didn't make a video about that on purpose, but we'll get there. And, of course, the game winner ended up being Tyler Seguin's goal in the second period. But the narrative now through 2 games, you have to remember in Game 1, Colorado was down, I think, 3-0 in that game. And they came back and won that game 4-3. Now it's Game 2. It was a 4-0 lead for Dallas, and it ended up being 4-3 before Dallas put in the game and kind of ended it and made it 5-3. They almost gave up. Well, they gave up a lead in Game 1 and lost, and they almost gave up a lead in Game 2. So now for Colorado, the psyche is, all right, well, you know what? We're even after 1. We have home ice advantage now. And both those games, they were up by 3 goals, 4 goals, and we still found a way to either win the game or really keep them on their toes and make it a close game. So, not to say that all the momentum was in Colorado's favor, but for Dallas, it was definitely a sense of no lead is safe for the Dallas Stars. Now the narrative starts to change once we get down to Colorado, because you're hoping that the Avalanche, who had I think they had the best home ice advantage in the league. They had I think they had the highest win percentage at home this past season. So you were expecting them to win at least one of these games in Game 3 and 4. Wasn't the case. A 4-1 victory for Dallas. A really good game by Jake Ottinger. A really good game by the offense. Once again, you're seeing the typical guys like Wyatt Johnston getting on the board and continuing to produce. And this was now going into Game 4 where the controversy off the ice comes into effect. So for the second consecutive season, Val Nichushkin is now officially suspended for 6 months, they said. He's in the NHL Player Assistance Program. I don't want to get too far into the details because it's all hearsay. He said this, she said that. If you know the past of Val Nichushkin, he had some issues last year that were a little bit different. But then now something again this year. So, I'm going to be the first one to sit here and say, instead of criticizing him, because that's what everybody else seems to be doing, listen, he's responsible for his actions. The NHL has put that down on him. I just hope he recovers. And maybe that means playing a year in Russia next year, just to maybe rejigger his mind and kind of correct himself. I'm hoping for the best. Everybody falls. It's just a lot harder when you're at the top, like a guy like Val Nichushkin, and then you fall all the way down. And it kind of feels like they kind of lost Game 4 in a sort. They'll never admit it, but they kind of lost Game 4 because of Val Nichushkin. And I don't want to blame all of it on him, but let's be honest, that was definitely on the mind of the Avalanche, and they kind of played like it. They lose Game 4, 5-1. So now both home games for Colorado, they get outscored 9-2 in those 2 games, and that was kind of the backbreaker in my opinion, because instead of it being 2-2 going back to Dallas, now Colorado somehow down 3-1 has to win 2 games in Dallas and 1 at home. And there's no guarantee they were going to win at home because Well, they lost game 3 and 4 at home. So there just really seemed like this was going to be a difficult series for Colorado to come back from. They were really playing a lot of the top lines for the Avalanche, and I think that started to wear on them, and we're going to get to that in a second. So game 5, really good performance by Colorado. It was a great bounce back game from game 4 where they kind of just looked lethargic and distracted, obviously. But game 5, they were able to assert their will on the game. The defensemen were really pinching and aggressive. And listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I think maybe other than Edmonton, I think the most fast skating, speedy team is the Colorado Avalanche. From the first line to the fourth line, Colorado is really skilled in terms of their transition game on the blue line, up front. And that's why Colorado is so dangerous in the playoffs, because they can very quickly make turnovers turn into odd man rushes, turning into goals and wins. And they did that throughout a decent amount of this series, and they made Dallas pay a couple of times for that. So they win game 5. You're starting to feel a little better. Let's go back to Denver, maybe take game 6 and send this to game 7 and see what happens. Oh, unfortunately, it didn't go that way. So game 6, as this game goes along, you could tell Colorado looked tired, and they really put in a good effort, but you could tell Dallas was just, they were rolling out all 4 lines, and Colorado seemed like they were stuck with those top 2 lines. They were really shortening the bench, and I think as this game went into double overtime, they did get tired. And I think that was pretty evident. In the first overtime, though, of course, there was controversy. Now, I've seen the replay, and I've seen it in when it was live, and then the replay to see was it really that egregious, or was it me being tired and it was 11 o'clock Eastern time? What happened here? Guys, that was a bad call. The first goal, Dallas scores a goal. I think it was Matt Duchene in front of the net, if I remember correctly. Cale Makar pushes. First of all, Matt Duchene is outside the crease. So Georgiev's fighting for positioning at the top of the crease, but Duchene's not in the crease. Okay? So technically, he's allowed to stand there. And then secondly, Cale Makar clearly pushes, we'll get to Makar in a second, he clearly pushes Duchene into Georgiev. And Georgiev, yeah, he didn't really have enough time to get back into position, but that was because Makar pushed him into his own goalie. So that was a really weird play. The only thing that I could really justify for why they took this goal back is apparently, I think the call on the ice initially was it was no goal. Now, if you look at review, it's pretty clear that this goal should be a goal, but they didn't want this series to end on a reverse call saying that it was a goal. And which is stupid, but I think that's ultimately what happened. They didn't want this series to be dictated by a review. But then what's the point of the review if, whatever. That's the NHL for you. But that was, listen, I know the officiating's been horrible this year. That cannot happen in the conference final. That cannot happen. But anyway, we get through the end of the first overtime. We get to second overtime, and like I said, Dallas they were just the better team. You're watching this overtime the whole time, and you're like, yeah, Dallas has this, right? Maybe Colorado can get it done because the big boys, but Cale Makar didn't have a great game. McKinnon did everything possible to try and keep them in this series. But ultimately, Matt Duchene coming back to Colorado, his original home. He was drafted by the Avs. He was the guy that really was supposed to be one of the first guys to build the core around in Colorado. And he comes back down to Colorado, in Colorado, does kind of the Nail Yakupov, on his knees slide at center ice in front of his former home fans, and the Et tu Brute from Matt Duchene toward the Colorado Avalanche. The fans were extra rowdy. So if they weren't upset about if they weren't going to be upset about the review, they were definitely upset about this goal. And at this point, I think they would look back and say, yeah, you know what? I probably would have rather the first goal than Matt Duchene somehow getting a great goal there. But at the end of the day, this is a situation where, like I said, Colorado was just outplayed. And give credit where it's due. for most of the series, Cale Makar played well. I loved watching Makar and Heiskanen, but like if one of them was on the ice, I would watch. If one of them was off the ice, I was watching the other one, sort of thing. They're just so skilled, and that is the next generation of defensemen in the National Hockey League. The days of the Zdeno Chara type defensemen are over. It's going to be more of these type of players, and we're seeing that through the draft. We're seeing that through the guys that are kind of coming up and developing. And Miro Heiskanen and Cale Makar, it was a joy to watch this series just for that. Jake Oettinger has been incredible. And I kind of said this at the beginning of the playoffs. This is why I picked Dallas to win the Stanley Cup. Is because Dallas just has that, like, they have the type of team that just you could roll out all four lines. There's not really a ton of weaknesses on the blue line, and they have Jake Oettinger. And if all four of those things are rolling the way they are right now, they beat Vegas, they beat Colorado, they're going to play either Vancouver or Edmonton. I got to be honest, for me, I really like Dallas's chances still of winning the Stanley Cup. And I don't want to jinx it, but the Avs have been really good this year. And shout out to Urban, one of my big supporters here at Goal Line Hockey, a great member on the community. He's going to be pissed that I'm saying this if he got this far. But, man, Dallas looks good this year. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you think of this series? It's going to be an interesting summer again for the Avalanche because, now you're kind of wondering with some of the injuries, like, Devon Toews was hurt throughout the playoffs. Is that a guy, like, they would even consider moving? Would they maybe move, like, a Sammy Girard? Like, what could we see for the Avalanche to kind of circumvent the cap? I know the Val Nichushkin thing is definitely going to be talked about. I wonder if they either waive him or I don't know what they're going to do. There's a lot of interesting moves that we could see for the Avalanche this summer. I want to know your guys' thoughts down below. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again next time.